1970, he was the MVP of the Super Bowl, leading the Chiefs past the Vikings. He was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1987. Before that, he was a star for Purdue in the 1950s. Dawson threw for more than 3,000 yards and was named an All-American in 1956. We'll have a special tribute tonight on News 18 at 6. Now to a developing story. We now know the name of the motorcyclist killed in yesterday's crash in West Lafayette. The county coroner says 22-year-old Robert Glenn died at the scene. The 911 call came in just before 5:30 Tuesday evening. The crash happened on Sagamore Parkway north of Wynn Henschel Boulevard. News 18 spoke with a witness at the crash. She says Glenn crashed into a car that slammed on its brakes. She says the collision was a chain reaction to another car that peeled out of a parking lot into the road. An autopsy is scheduled for tomorrow.
A historic announcement on student loans today. President Joe Biden announcing a plan to forgive up to $10,000 in student loan debt from millions of Americans. Student loan payments will also be deferred until January. Nancy Cordes has the story.
Months of uncertainty are over. President Biden is expected to announce today that the government will forgive up to $10,000 in federal student loan debt for Americans who make less than about $125,000 a year. Americans like Dara Zucker.
I'd like to see the $10,000 go away.
Dara borrowed $40,000 to get her degree. She's been making payments since she graduated in 2016. But with all that interest, she's barely made a dent.
I think it is predatory of colleges and schools to go after kids who may not have ever had any understanding of how finances work.
The president has been feeling the political pinch from both sides of his own party, with some progressives pushing to wipe out student debt altogether.
Right now, student loan debt is holding back people who are trying to buy homes. It's holding back people who are trying to start small businesses. It's even holding back people who want to start families.
But some Democrats in battleground states and many Republicans warn of unintended consequences.
I worry that we say to colleges, charge whatever you want, we're going to forgive the loan.
Canceling student debt would also be grossly unfair to the Americans who worked hard for years to pay off their loans.
Today's moves won't apply to students who are about to take out loans.
That's the challenge here, is that you potentially might spend $360 billion of taxpayer money. At the end of the day, you haven't altered the trajectory of college costs for millions of American families that are going to be going to college in the future.
That is a tougher problem to solve. For now, progressives argue eliminating some debt will help to level the playing field. And President Biden is also expected to announce today he is extending the pause on federal student loan payments for another few months. That pause has been in place since the start of the pandemic. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, the White House.
And U.S. Senator Mike Braun of Indiana is weighing in on the student loan forgiveness proposal. Braun's statement says President Biden isn't canceling debt, he's shifting it onto everyone, including the majority of Americans who chose not to get a degree. This will make inflation worse, and we should focus on getting more value out of colleges rather than giving them another reason to hike prices. Well, the dog days of summer are now upon us. Storm Team 18 Chief Meteorologist Chet Evans joins us now with an update on what to expect tonight. Chet?
Yeah, we're in the 80s area-wide right now, mid-80s Lafayette. It's mid-80s at Rochester, running in the 80s at Kokomo and Peru as well. 84 up to the north here, northeast of Reynolds. But I want you to notice something. First, it's been a really dry August so far in northern White County. But notice in June and July, the rainfall at this particular observation site was one of the highest in the entire viewing area, almost about normal due to two big rain events. We had one big rain event late June, one big rain event in early July here in northern White County. But you go to the opposite side of the spectrum down here on the Weehaw Plains, where high was 90 today, and look at the lack of rainfall. We've had a little more in August, but only around an inch in June and July, so not even 4 inches of rain for the summer yet out here on the Arnold Farm out on the Weehaw Plains. So still a pretty big difference in rainfall over the area, but certainly more dry than necessarily wetness. There are the clouds bubbling up and the heating up this afternoon. Our cold front is right here. This is what will swing by tomorrow evening, late tomorrow evening. Could bring a few scattered storms. We'll show you that next.
Thank you, Chad. The U.S. will ship more weapons and aid to Ukraine. The announcement comes as Ukraine celebrates its Independence Day, which marks the 6-month anniversary since the start of the war. President Biden announced the U.S. will give nearly $3 billion in aid to Ukraine. The military aid is the largest single package of assistance yet. The president said, quote, "This will allow Ukraine to acquire air defense systems, artillery systems, and ammunitions, counter unmanned aerial systems, and radars to ensure it can continue to defend itself over the long term," end quote. More than $10 billion worth of weapons and equipment have now been shipped to Ukraine to aid in its battle with Russia. Today's assistance is part of a $40 billion package Congress approved in May. And 6 months into the Russian invasion of Ukraine, one Purdue political science professor says it's difficult to predict how much longer the conflict could last. Purdue professor Kyle Haynes says Russia likely never saw the war lasting this long when it started back in February. At the time, he says Russian President Vladimir Putin believed his military would remove the Ukrainian government from power in a matter of weeks. Haynes says the shipment of weapons to Ukraine from Western countries like the United States has had an impact on Ukraine's ability to defend itself. Haynes says the United States' latest warning for Americans to immediately evacuate Ukraine could indicate an increase in non-military casualties.
I think we may be seeing the war start to shift even more towards a war of attrition and attacks on civilian targets that have not necessarily a high military value, but a high sort of value just in terms of, lives, money, things like that.
Haynes says he does not expect the United States to get directly involved in the war. The only way he does believe, is that if change could happen is if Russia invades a NATO country like Poland, where Ukrainian troops are being trained.
Well, parents are still adjusting to the Tippecanoe School Corporation's new staggered schedule. News 18's Joe Paul is live this afternoon near TSC's Klondike campus. He joins us now to share why drivers should be aware of those changes as well. Joe?
Hey, Jeff. Yeah, TSC this fall moved to a 4-tier schedule for its 19 schools. And the change was meant to address a critical bus driver shortage, resulting in hour-long delays before and after school. Well, that move appears to be working, even though TSC is reporting some delays this first week of school. The corporation is fully staffed going into the school year. But now another change to keep in mind. School zone time frames across the county are wildly different. That's because schools under this new staggered schedule can start as early as 7:30 in the morning and as late as 4:10 in the afternoon. Sheriff Bob Goldsmith says that's something drivers need to be aware of. He says the adjustment period has caused some confusion.
Traffic is a lot more of a problem in those areas right now. We're aware of that. We're trying to work with the schools and the school resource officers to figure out how we can alleviate the problem.
Remember, speed limits on county roads drop to as low as 20 miles per hour Monday to Friday, anytime a school zone is being enforced. And hey, for a full list of those school zone times and locations, truck on over to our website, WLFI.com. Reporting live in West Lafayette, Joe Paul, News 18.
All right, Joe, thank you. Well, this morning was ribbon-cutting ceremonies for the brand-new Patty Jiske Early Care and Education Center. People in attendance at the ceremony this morning included Patty Jiske, her husband, and former Purdue President Martin Jiske, their family, and leaders from both Purdue and Early Education Indiana. The center opened its doors just a few weeks ago. It focuses heavily not only on child care for faculty and staff at Purdue, but also early education, which is crucial, according to Maureen Weber, the Early Education Indiana's president and CEO.
And children learn really essential skills that follow them throughout their lives. So things like the ability to persist through a challenge, to have flexible thinking strategies and problem solving. All of those things really do get their start before a child even enters kindergarten. So it's just critically important that we get that initial wiring right, and facilities like this allow us to do that in spades.
Coming up tonight on News 18 at 6, hear from Patty Jiske herself about why this new facility is so important to her.
Now to an update on some key primary races for the Democratic primary in Florida. The former governor, Charlie Crist, won the chance to challenge current GOP Governor Ron DeSantis, who may become a 2024 presidential candidate. Scott McFarland has more on the big primaries.
We can make history, and we will shock the world.
Democrats are putting their bets on Charlie Crist, a man who served as a Republican governor before switching sides a decade ago.
Governor DeSantis only cares about the White House. He doesn't care about your house.
They're hoping he can take on Florida GOP Governor Ron DeSantis, who's been on the national stage taking on public school agendas and going up against Disney, leading up to a potential 2024 presidential run.
Florida will be the vanguard of freedom in this country.
We have to get out and exercise our right to vote.
Meantime, a former Orlando police chief appears set for a fight for the Florida U.S. Senate seat, now occupied by Republican Marco Rubio.
The president was
Congresswoman Val Demings, who is part of the team leading the impeachment proceedings against former President Trump, has won that Democratic nomination.
When it comes to unpacking our Supreme Court, I'm going to stand up and fight.
In New York, two major institutions of Congress were forced to face off. Judiciary Chair Jerry Nadler defeated Oversight Committee Chair Carolyn Maloney, which the party says is a major loss of a powerhouse Democrat due to a newly redrawn congressional district. And 2 hours north in New York's Hudson Valley, a special election there may set the roadmap for midterm strategies come fall.
Do you see outside interests coming in here trying to fire up the voting base?
Yeah, listen, without question, obviously, everyone has a degree of interest.
Democrat Pat Ryan won last night against Republican Mark Molinaro in the first competitive House election since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, setting the stage for what could be the last national test case on whether abortion will drive voters in November.
The foundations of our democracy were and remain under direct threat.
Because that was a special election, Ryan will only serve in the seat for a few months and have to run again in November. With the primary season largely complete now, we have roughly 2 months until we find out if Democrats have momentum to preserve majorities in Congress or if Republicans are now poised for victory. Scott McFarland, CBS News, New York.
Up next, a warning for all Hoosiers tonight. Fake cops could be targeting people right now. We have the information you need to know to protect your money from the con artists.
You're watching News 18 at 5. News from where you live.
Well, welcome back. Fake cops could be targeting people in Indiana.
The Marion County Sheriff is warning about a big increase in police impersonation scams. Callers are pretending to be deputies. They're using their real names and trying to get money. The phone number even looks like it's coming from the sheriff's office. The scammers tell people they'll be arrested and they need to pay up to avoid any legal trouble. They demand cash, gift cards, or even Bitcoin. In the past month, investigators have seen a 300% increase in reports of these types of scams, and these scammers tend to target the most vulnerable citizens, including the elderly.
They're already telling you that they're law enforcement, and that can be a little bit frightening, and they're keeping you moving through the steps that they want you to do.
Captain Gore isn't sure how many people have fallen victim to this scam, but he wants people to be extra cautious when they get a call. He says if there is any doubt, just hang up.
And now, your Storm Team 18 forecast. Weather from where you live.
Go for a bike ride or something like that this evening, walking the dog, maybe taking just a stroll outside. The weather looks good. The issue will be the high pollen that we're going to have around. Ragweed among the highest it's been all year today. Very light south-southwest wind, and temperature is falling to 84 by 7, 82 by 7:30, and then by 8:30 tonight, as the sun sets at 8:33, we'll drop to 78. For tomorrow morning, just in time for breakfast, again, some patchy fog around, though not as much as we've had the past several mornings, but some scattered clouds. Beware of a few patches of fog here and there. 63 Greater Lafayette, though the lows overall will run about 59 to 65. Followed by highs tomorrow anywhere from 85 to about 91. Now, again, after any patchy fog burns off in the morning, we may turn briefly mostly cloudy around midday to very early afternoon. And there could be a small isolated shower or two when it is mostly cloudy, and then the clouds may break up for a little more sunshine late in the day. We should heat up to 88. Winds out of the southwest, it's going to feel like about 91, and overall the heat indices varying from about 87 to 95, and then you see the highs mid to upper 80s to as high as about 91 degrees down our southwestern counties. Now, after a few scattered storms tomorrow night, a little more patchy fog on Friday morning, otherwise a partly cloudy day. A nice breeze from the north-northwest. Warm, 85 for the high after 66 in the morning. And there you see the highs anywhere from 81 at Winnemac up towards Dumont and Roselawn, about 80, 82 Rensselaer, but mid-80s Lafayette, mid to upper 80s southward, South Attica, and down towards Waynetown. Now this is tomorrow morning. This is 7:30. Here comes some of the clouds in from the northwest. This is around midday or 1, maybe an isolated shower or 2. Then the sun comes back out. It heats up and it's humid. And then we'll watch a few scattered storms form to our northwest and pass through late tomorrow evening and tomorrow night. This is around 10:30. And then finally around 1 a.m. you see what's left of these pulling away. Coverage only running about 30%, so extremely hit or miss. Friday into Saturday look okay, but then we watch for some scattered storms coming in by the time we get to Monday. We may see a few late morning, midday, and then perhaps a few more in the evening. And I can't completely rule out an isolated severe storm associated with those. This is our severe weather cast. Again, anywhere you see the darker grays or the yellow, that's kind of a slight risk scenario. So the stronger upper level winds for more slight risk or up here, but we may have a little marginal risk for severe weather, isolated severe storm or 2 possible. 90 on Saturday though, 93 hot on Sunday, 88 Monday, and then highs mid to upper 80s Tuesday, Wednesday.